9 killed in separate bombing of a home on Sunday, and 31 others shot dead near aid distribution site on Saturday. An Israeli airstrike has killed at least 10 people, including 6 children, who were waiting to collect water in Gaza, Palestinian health officials have said. A separate airstrike yesterday hit a home, killing 9 people, and 31 others were shot dead near an aid distribution site last Saturday, marking another bloody weekend as the conflict's death toll exceeded 58,000. Witnesses said a drone fired a missile at a crowd holding empty jerry cans beside a water tanker in the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza. About 20 children and 14 adults were lined up when the strike occurred. Ramadan Nassar, who lives in the area, told the Associated Press. Al-Auda Hospital received 10 bodies, including 6 children, health officials said. The Israel Defense Forces said a technical error caused a strike aimed at an Islamic Jihad terrorist to fall dozens of meters from the target, and that the incident was under review. The 9 people killed in the separate strike on the home in Zawaida also included children. The 31 Palestinians shot dead on Saturday were on their way to a distribution site run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, an Israeli-backed logistics group near Rafah in southern Gaza, according to hospital officials and witnesses. The Red Cross said its field hospital recorded its largest influx of dead in more than a year of operation after the shootings, and that the overwhelming majority of the more than 100 people injured had gunshot wounds.
Hundreds of mourners attended a funeral procession on Sunday for 2 men who were killed in clashes with settlers in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, one of them a U.S. citizen. 20-year-old Palestinian-American Saifullah Musalat, also known as Saif, was beaten to death by settlers on Friday evening, the Palestinian Health Ministry said in a statement. It also said a second man, 23-year-old Hussein al-Shalabi, was shot in the chest. Musalat's cousin, Diana Musalat, said the Florida native traveled to the region on June 4th to spend time with his loved ones.
He is the kid that brings light in every room he walks into. We won't let him be forgotten.
She said Israeli settlers surrounded Saif for 3 hours as medics tried to reach him. His younger brother then rushed to carry him to an ambulance, but it was too late, she said.
Saif was killed and died before reaching the hospital.
A U.S. State Department spokesperson said on Friday it was aware of the incident, but that it had no further comment, quote, out of respect for the privacy of the family and loved ones.
This is an unimaginable nightmare and an injustice that no family should ever have to face. We demand the U.S. State Department lead an immediate investigation and hold the Israeli settlers who killed Saif accountable for their crimes.
The Israeli military said Israel was probing the incident, which took place in Sinjar. It said confrontations between Palestinians and settlers broke out after Palestinians threw rocks at Israelis, lightly injuring them. The military said forces were dispatched and used non-lethal weapons to disperse the crowds. Settler violence in the West Bank has risen since the start of Israel's war against Palestinian militant group Hamas in Gaza in late 2023, according to rights groups. Dozens of Israelis have also been killed in Palestinian street attacks in recent years, and the Israeli military has intensified raids across the West Bank.
2 prominent Israeli politicians have criticized plans by the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to set up what it calls a humanitarian city in southern Gaza, saying the proposal would amount to interning Palestinians in a concentration camp. Former Prime Ministers Yair Lapid and Ehud Olmert leveled the criticism on Sunday as Israeli forces continued to bombard Gaza, killing at least 95 Palestinians over the course of the day. Lapid, the leader of Israel's biggest opposition party, told Israeli Army radio that nothing good would come out of the plans to establish the humanitarian city on the ruins of the city of Rafah. It's a bad idea from every possible perspective: security, political, economic, logistical, he said. I don't prefer to describe a humanitarian city as a concentration camp, but if exiting it is prohibited, then it is a concentration camp, he added. Lapid served as Israel's prime minister for 6 months in 2022. According to the Israeli government, The humanitarian city will initially house 600,000 displaced Palestinians currently living in tents in the overcrowded area of Al-Mawasi along Gaza's southern coast. But eventually, the enclave's entire population of more than 2 million people is to be moved there. Satellite images have shown Israeli forces have stepped up demolition operations in Rafah in recent months. On April 4th, the number of destroyed buildings stood at about 15,800. By July 4th, the number had gone up to 28,600. Nigeria's former president, Muhammadu Buhari, who led Africa's most populous country from 2015 to 2023 and was the first Nigerian president to oust an incumbent through the ballot box, died in London on Sunday, a presidential spokesperson has said. President Bola Tinubu's spokesperson said in a post on X, President Buhari died today in London at about 4:30 p.m., 15:30 GMT, following a prolonged illness. Buhari, 82, who first led the country as a military ruler after a coup in the 1980s, earned a devoted following for his brand of anti-corruption conviction politics. He referred to himself as a converted Democrat and swapped his military uniform for caftans and prayer caps. "I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody," was a regular refrain Buhari told supporters and critics alike. Buhari defeated Goodluck Jonathan in 2015 in what was judged to be Nigeria's fairest election to date. Many hoped the retired Major General would crack down on armed groups, just as he had as the country's military head of state. Instead, violence that had mostly been confined to the Northeast spread. That left swaths of Nigeria outside the control of the stretched security forces as gunmen in the Northwest, armed separatists, and gangs in the Southeast roamed unchecked. Much of Buhari's appeal lay in the anti-corruption ethos that was a central plank of his agenda as a military and civilian ruler. He said endemic corruption in Nigeria's political culture was holding people back, but Buhari quickly disappointed after his 2015 win. He took 6 months to name his cabinet. During that time, the oil-dependent economy was hobbled by low crude prices, prompting people to call him Baba Go Slow. His second victory in 2019 came despite his first term being blighted by Nigeria's first recession in a generation, militant attacks on oil fields, and repeated hospital stays. United States President Donald Trump has said he will send Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine as his administration signals growing disillusionment with Russian President Vladimir Putin's refusal to negotiate an end to Moscow's invasion. Trump said he had not decided on the number of Patriot batteries he would send to Ukraine, but they're going to have some because they do need protection. Trump's comments come after he last week confirmed that his administration had decided to sell weapons to NATO allies in Europe for them to pass on to Kyiv. Trump is set to meet NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte this week for discussions expected to focus on his plans to supply weapons to Kyiv. Rutte's trip to Washington, D.C. comes as Trump has teased that he will make a major statement on Russia on Monday. Yesterday, Axios, citing 2 unnamed sources, reported that Trump's announcement would include offensive weapons for Ukraine. After campaigning on a promise to bring a swift end to the war in Ukraine, Trump has expressed growing frustration with Putin's refusal to agree to a peace deal. While Putin has agreed to brief pauses in fighting, he has knocked back U.S. proposals for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. Speaking at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland yesterday, Trump confirmed the U.S.'s decision to send the missiles to Ukraine, where they are desperately needed.
Well, I'm going to have a meeting with the Secretary General who's coming in tomorrow, but we basically are going to send them various pieces of very sophisticated military, and they're going to pay us 100% for them, and that's the way we want it. And we've been trying to get that again. I don't think Biden ever asked for it. We're in for about $350 billion. Europe is in for $100 billion. That's a lot of money, 100, but they should be in actually for more than us. So as we send equipment, they're going to reimburse us for that equipment. Doesn't that sound good? That's the way it should have been a long time ago. I haven't agreed on the number yet, but they're going to have some because they do need protection. But the European Union is paying for it. We're not paying anything for it, but we will send it. It'll be business for us, and we will send them Patriots, which they desperately need, because Putin really surprised a lot of people. He talks nice, and then he bombs everybody in the evening. So there's a little bit of a problem there, and I don't like it.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday threatened to impose a 30% tariff on imports from Mexico and the European Union starting on August 1st. This follows weeks of negotiations with the key U.S. allies and top trading partners that failed to lead to a comprehensive trade deal. The fresh tariffs were announced in separate letters to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, posted on Truth Social. Spokespeople for the EU and Mexico said they were notified about the letters ahead of time. Von der Leyen responded on social media saying, quote, "We remain ready to continue working towards an agreement by August 1st. At the same time, we will take all necessary steps to safeguard EU interests, including the adoption of proportionate countermeasures if required." While Mexico's economic ministry said it hopes to reach an agreement with the U.S. before August 1st. Trump has sent similar letters to 23 other U.S. trading partners this week, including Canada, Japan, and Brazil. Trump said the 30% tariff rate was separate from all sectoral tariffs, which means 50% levies on steel and aluminum imports and a 25% tariff on auto imports would remain at those levels. The August 1st deadline gives countries targeted by Trump's letters time to negotiate a trade deal that could lower the threatened tariff levels. The spate of letters shows Trump has returned to the aggressive trade posture that he took in early April, when he announced a slew of reciprocal tariffs against trading partners that sent markets tumbling before the White House delayed implementation. But with the stock market hitting record highs in recent weeks and a bullish economy, Trump is showing no signs of slowing down his trade war. The European Union said on Sunday it is continuing to push for a trade deal with the United States, after President Donald Trump said on Saturday he would be imposing a 30% tariff on most imports from the EU starting August 1st. Trump's deadline gave the EU, like other targeted countries, time to hammer out agreements that could lower the threatened tariff rate. Ursula von der Leyen, head of the EU's Executive Commission, which handles trade policy for the 27 member states, says the bloc will maintain its two-track approach.
We have always been very clear that we prefer a negotiated solution. This remains the case, and we will use the time that we have now till the 1st of August. And on the second track, since the very beginning, we have worked and now are ready to respond with countermeasures.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz told broadcaster ARD that he will work intensively with von der Leyen and French President Emmanuel Macron to find a solution. Not reaching a deal could have severe economic consequences for the continent, according to ING chief economist Karsten Brzezinski.
When you really look at the economic impact of 30% tariff, this means 0.4 percentage points less GDP growth for the Eurozone. And if you think where we're currently standing, consensus expectation 0.7, 0.8% GDP growth for Europe this year. Well, this would mean if we were to get the 30% tariffs, that Europe would again be pushed back close to recession. And that is clearly a scenario Europe should try to avoid.
White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett told ABC News that Trump had seen some trade deal offers and thinks they need to improve, adding that without that, he would proceed with the threatened tariffs on Mexico, the EU, and other countries.
Southend Airport has shut until further notice after a small plane crashed, sending a fireball into the sky. Essex Police and East of England Ambulance Service responded to the incident yesterday afternoon after receiving reports of a collision involving a 12-meter plane. Zeus Aviation, based at Lelystad Airport in the Netherlands, confirmed its SUZ-1 flight had been involved in an accident at London's Southend Airport. The company said in a statement it was actively supporting the authorities with the investigation. Its website says the plane can be used for medical flights to transport patients or organs. Witness John Johnson, who was at the airport with his children and wife, said he saw a big fireball after the plane crashed, head first into the ground. There has been no confirmation of the number of casualties. Southend Airport said, "Our thoughts are with those affected by Sunday's events and all passengers impacted by this disruption. We will restart flight operations as soon as possible and will continue to update the public on developments.
Australia will not commit troops in advance to any conflict, the country's defence industry minister said on Sunday. Pat Conroy was responding to a Financial Times report that the United States has been pressing allies on what they would do if a conflict broke out over Taiwan.
One, we don't engage in hypotheticals, we don't discuss hypotheticals. But secondly, the decision to commit Australian troops to a conflict will be made by the government of the day. Not in advance, but by the government of the day, and that's our position, and it's been long established.
China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own and has not ruled out the use of force to bring the island under its control. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te rejects China's sovereignty claims, saying only Taiwan's people can decide their future. The US does not offer a blank check guarantee to defend Taiwan, but it has been pushing allies to step up defense spending, saying it's part of President Donald Trump's America First agenda of restoring deterrence. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stressed on Sunday that his country was considerably increasing defense spending. He told reporters that Australia supports the status quo on Taiwan and is against any unilateral action there.
We want peace and security in our region. We don't want any change to the status quo. That's Australia's position today. That was Australia's position last week. That's been a bipartisan position for a long period of time.
Albanese was speaking in Shanghai at the start of a 6-day visit to China that's likely to focus on security and trade. He watched on as Tourism Australia and Trip.com Group signed a deal to promote Australia as a premier tourist destination for Chinese travellers.
A preliminary report into last month's fatal Air India crash depicted confusion in the cockpit after the plane's engine fuel cutoff switches flipped almost simultaneously and starved the engines of fuel. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner began to lose thrust and sink shortly after takeoff. The report from Indian accident investigators did not say how the switches could have flipped to the cutoff position during the flight.
From the findings,
former pilot and senior lecturer at Buckinghamshire New University, Marco Chan, says he believes it was a chip malfunction rather than human error that led to the crash. He points to a previously issued service bulletin from the engine manufacturer advising maintenance of a flawed chip to prevent signal loss.
I believe the FAA has, or together with GE General Electric, the engine manufacturer, has issued a service bulletin. I believe it was about 11,000 cycles they will have to replace the chip, and if it is not replaced or maintenance isn't done correctly, it could lead to intermittent loss of signal. Once you have a loss of signal, the fuel isn't commanded, i.e. in the cutoff position, then there's no fuel going to the engine.
Chan says it would be a challenge for pilots to accidentally move the switches into the cutoff position.
You have to physically sort of not pull the pin, but if you have to pull the toggle out, then it can move to a different position. So you do have to do it on purpose, not accidentally knocking it to the wrong position. Very rarely that can happen, or it's close to zero.
At the crash site, both fuel switches were found in the run position, and there had been indications of both engines relighting before the low-altitude crash, the report showed. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was bound for London from India's Ahmedabad. The crash killed 260 people, making it the world's deadliest aviation accident in a decade.
Security was tight as 12 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists appealed their subversion convictions and jail terms on Monday. The appeal stems from the so-called 47 Democrats case, named for the number of activists who were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit subversion in early 2021. The court eventually found all but 2 of the defendants guilty of organizing and holding an unofficial primary election in July 2020. Prosecutors considered the action to be a plot to undermine the Hong Kong government. Of the 16 Democrats who pleaded not guilty during the trial, 11 have decided to appeal, while another who pleaded guilty is appealing her sentence. The case has spotlighted Beijing's ongoing crackdown on dissent and drawn international criticism. Some countries, including the United States, have condemned the case as politically motivated. They are calling for the immediate release of the Democrats who were sentenced last November to prison terms of up to 10 years. Hong Kong and Chinese authorities have defended the independence of the judiciary and say no one is above the law, and the Democrats have received a fair trial. The appeals are expected to take around 10 days and will also include a government appeal against the acquittal of one of the Democrats.
Hummer, a young mixed breed dog, walks around a variety of samples until he finds what he's searching for, the scent of screwworm. The canine is part of a select group chosen for a 3-month intensive training program from a special unit of Mexico's health safety agency, Senacica. The handful of highly trained canines are learning to detect the scent of screwworm and other pests or diseases in live animals or agricultural products. While a small element of the country's screwworm response, the dogs offer a glimmer of hope in controlling the flesh-eating pest, which has infected Mexico's cattle herd and disrupted livestock trade with the United States. Feisty pups are the perfect candidates, says Cesar Dangu, head of the Canine Training Center, Siacan.
Sometimes what people don't want is ideal for us. A dog that is restless, playful, gluttonous, that throws food around, eats it, and is still hungry is an ideal dog for this activity.
Not all dogs respond to the aroma of the pest, which infests livestock and wildlife and carries maggots that burrow into the skin of living animals, causing serious and often fatal damage. Dangu said some dogs will refuse to approach the aroma, making those that take to it even more valuable. The dogs trained at Siacan will work until they complete 8 years on the job or turn 10 years old, whichever comes first. After screwworm cases started emerging in Mexico, the U.S. closed its southern border to imports of certain livestock, including cattle, in May. On Wednesday, the U.S. government once again closed the border to cattle after a new case of screwworm was detected in Veracruz state. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum called the decision exaggerated. At least 47 new cases of screwworm are detected daily in Mexico, according to government data.